Hi, Dorian. How are you?
I'm good. You have a nice summer?
Yeah. It's so sad. It's getting cold.
Yeah, I know. Time is flying.
Yes. Painful reality that it's not a long season.
The older you get, the faster it moves.
Mm-hmm. So true. Good evening, Paul. How are you?
Hello.
Hey, Paul.
Hello. You can hear me? Okay, good. Seems like we'll have a fairly short meeting tonight.
I hope so.
We need 6 people. We got 3.
We got 3. We need 3 more.
Here we go. We got Craig.
There goes. There
All
goes.
right.
Hi, Craig.
We need 2 more.
Craig. I found 2 money boxes. Lions.
Did you go treasure hunting?
Yeah, in my closet.
Oh. I think Luann will be here because I just saw her an hour ago. All right, Sarah. Number 5. We need 1
Yay.
more.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hello.
So,
We're waiting for 1 more member.
all right, we got Luann. With Luann, we have a quorum. All right. So I call to order the meeting. Oh, start the recording, Jennifer.
He wants this over with.
There we go. Let's see. Jolene started this, so 1 second.
Okay,
Jolene, are you there?
Yeah, I don't have a record button.
That is very strange.
where did that button go?
Record. Record this meeting. Yep.
Recording in progress.
All right.
It was in a different spot.
Okay, I call to order the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of Mansfield, Connecticut on September 19th, 2022 at 6:01 PM. Members present are Aho Corsi, Chandy, Cooley, Wutch. Have I got everyone? Okay. Got 6, okay. Mansfield, Connecticut on September 19th. Someone's got a delayed recording on, so.
Does someone have the,
Turn that,
maybe unmute?
yeah, mute.
Okay.
So there's something I'd like to add to the agenda. And that is the election of a vice chair. In case I'm not around, we need a vice chair. And I have had a volunteer. I didn't have to twist her arm too much. Binu has volunteered.
So first you need a motion to add it to the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay,
Great.
so I'm seeking a motion to add it to the agenda. Hello, Katie. Hello, Laurel. So we got 2 more. Katie Frattoni is here, and Laurel Manville is here, an alternate, and she's seated for absent members. DeVivo and who else is missing? That's all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't got that many members anymore.
Okay.
Would someone like to volunteer that?
So we need,
I'd like to make the motion to add the items to the agenda.
Okay, moved by Cooley, second,
Corsi,
seconds.
second by Corsi, all in favor? Okay.
so
passes.
Mr. Chair, why don't you
Yes.
put that after the approval of the minutes? How
Oh,
about that?
very good. Okay, we'll do that, but we can,
You'll add
we
it to
can-
the agenda as section 2B.
okay, all right. So now we'll do the minutes of September 6th.
Paul, I want to clarify that I did watch the tape.
Okay. Very good.
Chandy moves to accept the minutes as presented.
Okay, moved by Chandy,
I'll second
second
for
by
Tony.
Tony. All in favor? Okay, minutes pass unanimously. Now we'll move on to the selection of a vice chair. So how does this work, Jennifer? Someone needs to move
So
that a
why don't,
particular person is
why
selected.
don't you nominate
Okay,
Ms. Chandy, and
Okay.
then if she accepts the nomination, then folks can vote.
okay. So I nominate Binu Chandy. Am I pronouncing your first name correctly?
Okay, she has.
Yes,
I say it many different ways. Is Binu correct?
yes, Binu is correct.
Okay, very good. I mean, we've only
I
been on the board
respond
for.
to it. I respond to Binu and I respond to Binu, but.
Okay, all right. I don't want to put the emphasis on the wrong syllable here. Okay, so she is our oldest member, longest serving member, not oldest, longest serving member. And I was pleased that she volunteered to take on this task. We do need to have a vice chair in case I'm not around. And so I nominate Binu Chandy to be our new vice chair.
I'd like to second the nomination.
Okay, second by Cooley. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, passes unanimously. You're an officer.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay. We have a zoning report in your.
Paul,
Yes,
Paul,
yes,
who's the secretary replacing Vera?
that is
Oh,
Luann.
Luann. Very
Right.
good. Thank you.
So we got a full slate of officers. So our first new business is a discussion of the zoning regulation rewrite, which is just starting. And you want to bring us up to speed, Jennifer, on that?
Yes, so we have, so as you recall, we have been wanting to rewrite and reorganize our regulations for a long time right now, or a long time. And we went out for an RFP, I think it was in 2019, actually, and we chose Mike D'Amato and John Guskowski of CME at that time to do the rewrite reorganization and look at some special topics. CMA was then sold to CHA, and then John and Mike moved, they actually went out on their own and left CHA and started their own company called Tyche Planning and Policy Group. And I'm sure Mike would be happy to tell you all about it. But the Regulatory Review Committee met on Thursday, and they reviewed the scope of work that Tyche has agreed to, and also the first deliverable of that scope of work is to review a proposed organizational outline. So Mike's here just to sort of introduce Tyche himself, to do just a very, very brief overview of the organizational outline, and then talk about the timeline. You all have you're gonna have a very busy fall and winter, and maybe even beyond that. And so there are gonna be points in this process, or there will be several points in this process where the staff and Tyche are gonna need all hands on deck from PZC to really review and give feedback on sections. And there's also going to be a community engagement piece. But I just wanted Mike to kind of go through this real quick, introduce himself, and see if members had questions, and to see if you had questions really about how you're going to be involved with this process and how the public's going to be involved. So I'm going to hand it over to Mike.
Before Mike starts, let me just emphasize that this first part of it is simply to get the regulations into better organization. We're not going to actually change any regulations. We're just going to organize them so we can actually find what we're talking about. So if anyone's listening who has a pitchfork in hand, they can put the pitchforks away. But later on, we make changes in regulations. But right now, we're just trying to get it organized so we can find what we're looking for. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so it's nice to, I guess, virtually meet you all. My name, as they mentioned, is Mike D'Amato, and I'm one of the principals with the Tyche Planning and Policy Group. I guess we've got quite an active past 18 months with bouncing all around. But yes, the long and short of it was we went from a very small engineering firm, which was across the street from Town Hall, to being part of a large engineering firm, which frankly didn't have any interest in offering planning services. And so John and I basically decided to go off on our own because we really like what we do. We've been excited about this project for 3 years. We've been holding our breath for 3 years, working with staff at Town Hall to kind of keep things moving through all kinds of stuff, COVID and everything else. So we're super ready to get started and get this project moving. As they mentioned, but what we really provided as the first step, the key, is the organizational outline. And this is the first step in sort of our our first stab at the reorganization of the regs. This whole process, I've said this before, the process as far as timing, how hard we put our foot on the gas, if we may need to slow down, what ultimately lives in Article 3 or Article 8, is very fluid. You know, we will dial this in as we go. So we're certainly setting the foundation, but we're going to have a lot of this discussion as time goes on. So don't feel like we need to review each individual sub item or subtopic here and where it lives, because we want this to be very organic and sort of have this outline be living to some extent as we go. But the key here is, again, to reorganize it, to make it easier to use. We want to significantly reduce the size of your, quote, special regulations section, which has just a whole slew of criteria for all sorts of things, and get those into the area of the regs where they're most appropriate to live. And if you take a look at like the residential section, for example, one of the things that we're really going to try and do is so looking at this, for example, which is on the screen, we want these sub articles, if you will, for residential uses to stand on its own. We want a user to be able to determine the criteria, the setbacks, the application process, all the information that they need. We want it to live in the same place. Right now, someone looking at accessory dwelling units or something like that may go through 3 or 4 different articles of the regulations to determine what the criteria are, what their setbacks are, what their application procedures might be, and then how to go about the application process. And we really want to streamline that to make these much easier to use. So the first step was us going through this process, reviewing what you had, reviewing POCD, some of the materials we'd been provided by staff, and coming up with this outline. And just to kind of give you a quick overview, the next step will be for us to do what we're calling a legislative and best practices review. So the first part of that will be to review the regs for things which do not meet current statutory criteria. Things we know about are, we've heard about recently, accessory dwelling units, content neutral sign regulations, all the provisions of PA 2129. So we will do a legislative review to identify the things that are sort of non-negotiable, and with that, a best practices review to determine if there are things that could be modified, either taken away or perhaps implemented to better align what you're trying to do with the zoning regulations with perhaps various initiatives in the POCD, to make sure that we're doing all that we can to encourage what you feel is most important. From there, we'll go into a sort of a visioning and drafting phase where we'll get into all of those special topics and really look at learning about them, having some listening sessions or topic-based hearings to hear from the public and other stakeholder groups about things like middle housing, small lot zoning, content neutral signage. So these are just a handful of the special topics that we identified with staff. We're not saying this is necessarily a total list, to really figure out what parts of the regulation overall, or the body of the regulations, you want to move and change and get rid of or delete. So this is where we envision a lot of that public outreach really happening and trying to hear from folks about what they like and don't like. This is probably the meat of that drafting phase. And then from there, we'll start refining and actually preparing more of a comprehensive document, which we're hoping will ultimately codify through the town's E-code system. But I guess in a nutshell, that's kind of how we're going to approach this, working with the commission here, the regulatory review committee as well, and staff. But the hope is that this won't be overly controversial, because our goal is to not really implement things that are more restrictive, more difficult, have more requirements. You know, we really want to make these regulations more manageable and more accessible. And with that, I'll take a breath and pass it off.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mike? Yeah, go ahead, Binu.
When you say best practices, are you going to be looking at other towns who, you know, overhaul their zoning regs and who've been, you know, touted as, you know, a good job with their zoning regs, the latest rewrite?
Yeah, certainly we'll be looking at sort of what you could call like an industry best standard, right? What we know in Connecticut is seen as sort of an ideal way to approach a certain regulatory structure or a certain topic. Yeah, so we definitely want to align to some extent. But, you know, we also want to look at things like, do you have criteria in the regs which are arbitrary that an applicant may never actually know what you mean? They can't design for something or submit an application if the criteria are so abstract that they don't know what you're thinking. So that'll be sort of the other part to that. But yes, we'll certainly be looking at what other towns are doing and trying to compare to what you guys have to see how we can implement those I guess the positive parts of what some other towns are doing, right? Not all regulations are created equal, but we've got a good sense, I think, of some of those major categories and how we can make those improvements.
Thank you.
Good. I can't wait to get this going.
Yes.
This is going to help everybody.
Yeah, so Mike and his team they work in many, one of the reasons why we chose them, and since we chose them, they've done even more work. They have worked in several other towns in the state. And Mike and another one of his team members are very involved with the Casio Institute. So not only have they written these regs, but they are out there on the ground enforcing them. So I'm very excited about this because I'm excited for the regulations to be easier for Jolene and for me and for you all to read and to understand, but also for people who want to develop, that they need to know what we want and what we don't want. And that has to be clear. And I'm really hopeful that this process is going to really help in that situation. So, so there are, I'm going to share a different screen because Mike has done sort of a regulation, a timeline. Can you see that now? Are you looking at that? It says, zoning. Okay, great. So this is something staff just received this afternoon. And so, you know, whoops, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. I would like to kind of review this also with Mike, but because I'm hoping that maybe we can get the regulations reorganized and do the legislative best practices and then have them put into E-code before we attack those special regulations that people will really need to get some detailed public input on. So, but those are things we're going to iron out. You can see on the right-hand side, Mike has identified Mansfield tasks, things that both staff and the commission and the public are going to need, and sort of what Tyche is going to be doing. So we've been working with Tyche. We just signed the contract about, I don't know, 10 days ago and given you your notice to proceed, Mike. So we're still ironing out some of the details, but we wanted to make sure the commission was fully aware of this, and we really just want to get folks' initial reactions. I did upload the actual outline and the scope of work to the packet. So if you do a refresh on the packet, you'll see that, and I can also send those to you if you did not get those, so that you can have some time to look at them.
Okay, very good. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, we'll let Mike get to work.
Sounds good. And, you know, as I've said before, we're very accessible. If anybody has questions, comments, concerns, you can email Jennifer or Jolene, and they can reach out to us. We're very much available. So we want this to be an open process where everybody's comfortable in saying what they think or questions. If there's things in the regs that they never made sense to you, safe space, feel free to say that, because this is how we'll be able to make those really key improvements. So don't be strangers if something comes up. We want to hear about it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so next new business is the standard at Four Corners. I understand there's some grading and excavation and time of work issues. Bring us
Well,
up,
yeah, okay.
bring us up to
So,
speed, Jennifer.
when the commission approved the special permit back last year, there were a couple conditions that the applicant was allowed to, a couple issues that the applicant was allowed to defer the submission of. And one was information related to grading and excavation. And that's in Article 10, Section H3 and H5, because they did not have a contractor, they hadn't retained one. So some of these are kind of technical details that they needed to kind of flesh out once they had a contractor on board. And the second was the affirmative fair housing marketing plan. And that's due to the timeliness of the information. They, the one that you're looking at tonight is most likely going to be what they're going to use, but there may be changes based on market conditions. So I'm going to hand this over to Sarah Sharp, who is the attorney for the standard at Four Corners. She's going to kind of give you an overview, and then I do have a motion prepared for you.
Okay, Sarah.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. This is Sarah Sharp. I'm at Hurwitz, Sagarin, Salzburg, and Nuff, with an office at 147 North Broad Street in Milford. As Jennifer has already summarized, much of what we're doing here tonight is to satisfy condition 2A of our special permit approval, actually all of it. All of this information in section H3 and 5, it was just details that we didn't have yet because we weren't at that point yet. Now that we've submitted for our zoning permit, we have those details. So we've gone through and provided a response to each, subsection in that section of your regulation, so that we've clearly answered each question. And I know that zoning staff has reviewed it and they are satisfied with the responses. The one thing that I wanted to note that zoning staff had questions about was on the on-site screening and crushing activities. So as part of during the construction process, especially during the initial site work and foundation work, we will have on-site topsoil screening. That's to allow us to salvage and reuse the topsoil that we'll be excavating from the property. It's good overall because it means that we can reduce the truck traffic that's leaving the site to take away material and coming to the site to bring in topsoil. But in order to reuse it on the site, we have to screen it properly to make sure that anything that shouldn't be in there isn't. And so that's what the topsoil screening activities is referring to. The on-site rock crushing, again, this is relating to efforts to reclaim material on the site and reuse it in our construction, as opposed to hauling in new material to the extent that we can. There's a lot of existing pavement on the site. And so our hope is that some of that can be reclaimed and crushed for use in the new interior roads and some of the paved areas. So that is what that activity is relating to. The concern with any of these activities would be noise and dust. And so we worked with staff to make sure that we have some mitigating sort of requirements here that we would be held to as we move forward. We have specified that the screening and crushing machinery that would be used on site has to be set as far, into the rear of the property as we can. So you're far from the neighboring sites, but also maintaining a specific distance from the wetlands so that we don't impact the wetlands in the rear of the property. And so that's to sort of mitigate the noise. The other issue, the other thing that we're doing to mitigate the noise is, even though the regulations allow construction activities from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., we're limiting the crushing and screening to 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We also will have periodic wetting of the area to mitigate the dust. And I think that that's sort of, that's what all of the contractors would do in this scenario anyway, but we want to make sure that you guys know that we'll be mitigating that issue. Turning to the affirmative fair housing marketing plan. This is something that you may not have seen before, maybe you have, but it's
Sarah?
a document that, yep.
I just have one question before you move on to that. Can you
Yeah.
just explain to the commission how long you think you will be doing some of this processing? Because this isn't going to be, I mean, you're expecting a 2-year construction site, but the on-site processing will not be, how long do you think that processing will take? Maybe Chase or Jeff can answer that, just for the commission.
Right. Yeah, I think that at least from what I have here, that this would be happening closer to the start of the construction process. It would be, you know, you're doing the excavation and then you're putting down the foundations and the roadways. So we have that in our schedule here as approximately 6 months. But Chase, if you have additional details, or Jeff, I'm happy to have you jump in.
Yeah, that's accurate. I would say the only point I would add is Sarah's right that site work activities will be approximately 6 months. However, prior to that, we're obviously going to be demoing the existing structures, doing any other like clearing and like grubbing activities that are needed. So that'll be at least probably 3 additional months prior to the site work itself. So, but Sarah's right, 6 months for all the screening and whatnot.
When would the demo start?
We're looking to start demo in November.
Mhm.
So pretty imminent at this point in time.
Okay, on to fair housing.
Okay, Jennifer. Yeah. Okay, great. So the affirmative fair housing marketing plan, this is intended, it's a document that a lot of what's in it is kind of regulated by what's in the statute. So the content is supposed to provide an overview for what our plan is to make sure that we reach out to the demographics that are least likely to apply, and to make sure that individuals who might not otherwise know about this development and the affordable housing units that are being offered at the development, that they are that we are reaching into those communities and providing them with marketing materials so that they would know about it and they would apply. And the way that you do that by statute is kind of, you look at the census data for Mansfield and the counties that Mansfield is located in, and then you look for what demographics are not there, and that's where you try to, you know, make efforts to reach out into. And then, as in addition to that, we added children with families, and that was based on feedback from the commission during our special permit process. And that is also identified as a group that is least likely to apply. So how do we make sure that children with families know about this development, not only that there's, you know, affordable housing, but, you know, just the development itself, who might not otherwise think to apply or know about it just because of the location being a university town. But we've put together a list of sort of a very broad overview of where we would expect to advertise. But like Jennifer mentioned, this is kind of a little bit of a living document until we get closer to when we're going to advertise. Right now we have, you know, a construction process is going to be quite a long time. So obviously we don't start advertising now. By the time if somebody needed affordable housing right now, it wouldn't be helpful to them. So what this document is intended to do is that we would, you know, for example, there are some things listed in there that we would advertise through Yukon groups that are, you know, targeted towards students with families, with children, but we don't necessarily know that we'll be allowed to advertise there, or that they'll let us put an advertisement onto the university website. So those are the types of things that might change as we get closer and we actually reach out and make those contacts, and we'll have more details. But the intention would be that our marketing efforts are consistent with this document, and that before we get to the certificate of zoning compliance, the staff can look at it again, and they can also see the marketing materials that we intend to provide. And I know that Jennifer's looked at this, but most importantly, I think for this one, the Fair Housing Officer for Mansfield has looked at it and was satisfied. So we're happy to answer any questions. That's sort of a very high level overview. I know you've seen a lot of me, so.
Any questions for Sarah or for Jeff and Chase as well? Well, I'm looking forward to this finally getting started. Seems like we've talked about it for quite a
So
while.
are we.
Yeah, we are as well. We're looking forward to breaking ground, and we're excited about this project. So
If you get some families in there, that's going to help us look better, and you look better, and everybody look better.
yep, that's the goal, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, you have a motion, a proposed motion, Jennifer.
I do. Here we go.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Okay, would someone like to put that forward?
I can do
I
that.
will.
Okay, thank you, Luann.
Okay, sure.
Oops, sorry. Let me get this so you can see it. There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go.
I, Luann Cooley, move to approve the following submittals by the Standard at Four Corners LLC applicant pursuant to condition 2A for the special permit approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on February 22nd, 2022. PZC file number P1372-2. Number 1, response to requirements outlined in Article 10, Section H.3 and H.5 dated August 23, 2022. And 2, affirmative fair housing marketing plan dated August 2022. In considering this approval, the Commission has determined that the responses to the requirements outlined in Article 10, Section H.3 and H.5 provide adequate measures to protect on-site and off-site natural resources and will have minimal impact on neighboring properties, and that the affirmative fair housing marketing plan outlines an adequate strategy to market the affordable units on the property to a diverse population. Prior to issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance, a revised affirmative fair housing marketing plan shall be reviewed and approved by the town's fair housing officer and/or the Mansfield Affordable Housing Committee or their designee.
Moved by Cooley,
Second by Corsi.
okay, second by Corsi. Any discussion? Thank you. All in favor? Okay, I believe that's unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much. I hope to see machinery moving
you.
around on the site.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Take care.
Okay, so now we have some are these 2 pre-applications?
Yes,
Jennifer,
there
or
are
is it
two,
one?
there are 2 pre-applications on 2 abutting properties by the same developer. So,
Okay, all right.
And so I did include in your packet, last time Jolene had read the pre-application policies and procedures, but I did include that so that hopefully you all reviewed it, but I can kind of go through some of the details of that just so you know the ground rules, and the applicant does as well. But basically, these reviews are strictly limited to 30 minutes. Proposed applicants shall keep their presentations to brief to allow sufficient time for commission discussion. Let's see. Basically, these are non-binding, and if anything you say, is not gonna say that it's approved. Let's see, and then let's see. Commission members may offer comments on the proposed application, but are not required to do so. Any comments of a commissioner is the opinion of the commissioner and shall not be interpreted as the consensus of the commission, nor shall any comment of the commissioner bind the commission or that commissioner's vote on a formal application. Commissioners may offer comments which are contradictory to each other. Any interpretation of commission comments is the responsibility of the proposed applicant, and this is non-binding, and there is no appeal to this. So I think that's the gist of it. But again, those outlines are in your packet. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Michael Charles, I believe, and he's going to walk you through his proposal.
Michael,
Mike,
you have the
Jeff,
floor.
and Jeff. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of sharing the screen, it might be best if Jeff Fitzgerald is able to do that because he'll have our presentation. But basically, I can introduce our team. I'm Michael Charles, one of the partners at Benchmark Development. We're located in Great Barrington, Mass, which is in the Berkshires, a couple hours from you guys. My partner, Brian Cohan, and I have been in development for about 30 years, and we've been as Benchmark for about 10 years. And we do primarily multifamily, mixed-use, hotel, and resort properties. And we typically work in about a 3-hour radius from Great Barrington. So obviously, your town's kind of is within that radius. And we typically do projects that are sort of in the, I'd say $20 to $40 million range. So they're not monster projects. We tend to try to do projects that are blend in and fit in with a neighborhood. We like to design projects in a way that they fit the surrounding architecture. Jeff can probably move on to the next screen, and there would be some just sample projects that we've done in the past. So that's just a sampling of the general look and feel of some of our projects. As I said, upper left corner, that's just a mixed use building in the middle of Great Barrington. There's a hotel that we have out in Verona, New York. And then there's a sampling of just residential rental product, cottage products, standard multifamily products as well. So the two projects that we were trying to introduce to the committee tonight are, as Jennifer said, they're budding projects. One is at 555 Middle Turnpike, and that is in the PB3 zone. I think we have this. It's probably the 541 packet, unfortunately, but
I can pull up either one. Michael, I can pull up whatever you'd like first.
why don't we do the 555 first, as I think that was identified first in the minutes. So the project at 555 is, again, it's in the PB3 zone. It's a more traditional apartment building. It's on a fairly tight site, actually, and the representative projects that you just saw there were 3 to 5 story buildings. Again, in terms of architecture, we try to have interesting New England designs, since that's where we are. In the case of the images that you're seeing there, typically if it's a taller building, we'll try to segment the building a little bit. So you might have porches on the lower floor, and then you might have a band of a story or two of the residential, and then you'll have a roof structure that oftentimes has dormers, and the units are built into the roof, so to speak. So we're trying to, in those cases where you have large buildings, just try to reduce the scale of them so they fit in the environment. Again, this product is at the edge of the PB3 zone in the Four Corners area. So you can see it's a fairly narrow site. It's impacted by both a sewer easement and a power easement and wetlands. This site, as well as the abutting site, have been looked at before, I think, by the committee. Our approach with these has really been to view them as two separate sites because they have different characteristics, and I think they appeal to different segments of the target population as well. So then on the next page, you'll see a general layout of what we're envisioning as a multi-story building, again, center corridor, double loaded corridor building that is fronting on the street and has parking on the side and in the rear, trying to maximize, frankly, the footage that's on the site and being consistent with what's in the PB3 zone. Our unit mix and our unit count, at this point, our unit count is at 57. Jeff can talk about some of the density bonuses that we'd be applying for. That count and the unit mix, we're in the very early planning stages, of course, so we're really just massing at this point. Jeff, you might want to talk for a second just about the density bonuses that we were planning on applying for that get us to the 57 units.
Yeah, so because the site is it's the last PB3 site, and it does sit very proximate to other developments of high density to the page right here. In fact, I can pull up an image, I think from the Mansfield GIS. This is the site here, and I'll just shut off the land use figure and turn on the. You can see here. This is the site here. It's the last piece of PB3, and you can the standard that we were just talking about is right here. And there's some other. It's a very close connection to get to some to parcels in this area. So we thought it might be an appropriate place for off-site trail connections to be able to link some of the more dense residential developments to give a bit more connection and be, if desired by the town. It seemed to me to be something that I've heard discussed in the past. So that's one opportunity. There's the other density bonus is a potential for possibly doing structured parking underneath this building using the basement, because the site does fall off close to a story from front to back, which would lend itself to allow for basement parking in the underneath the first floor. And that's a possibility that we might explore. And there's other in PB3, there's a couple other density bonuses for family-friendly units and things like that I think we're all exploring as well.
Okay. So some of the other things that Jeff has shown on this image is obviously some of the amenities that we're thinking of that might make sense on the site. Obviously, what we're really marketing to, it's a market rate multifamily product. So, things like dog runs and playgrounds for kids, and there's a scenic overlook image that's in there. Just there's certain places where there, might be opportunities to, for the people to just get out there and engage with nature. In addition to the walking trails, there's also the possibility of outdoor kind of a barbecue area where people from the complex can use, complex provided barbecues and fire pits. Again, this is a pretty tight site, so we're going to have to be creative on how we organize and arrange some of those amenities, but just recognizing that, even in this kind of a dense environment, people obviously want to get outside and be able to enjoy the environment, especially in that area down there. So I think that is the general overview of that property. And again, this is, we've shown it parked for all the units on the surface right now. Frankly, the decision as to whether there's underground parking or not, it becomes an economic decision. It's, you've got to build a basement anyway, or some kind of a foundation anyway. There's a cost to structured parking. You got to see how many additional units you can get because of that. So that's all the math that we're obviously in the process of working through right now as we figure out our massing and how we want the building to look. So,
so would you rather provide some affordable housing or pay for someone else to do it somewhere else in town?
I'm not sure. Our general goal or our general perspective is we're not affordable housing developers. So there's lots of things about that we don't know how to do necessarily. Sometimes if it's just a unit or two, then it's, if there's a few number of units, then obviously we can figure that out. There's other projects where we've done larger amounts of affordable housing and we partnered with somebody else because that's their expertise. And there's obviously a lot of administrative issues related to some of that. So, we haven't made that determination, but our general approach is sometimes it makes more sense to have a larger affordable project somewhere else where somebody is actually doing that knows that product better. we recognize that, I think in general, it's good to have mixed income within a community. So I don't know off the top of my head how many affordable units we would be required here, but I think that would be part of the calculus. How many are there? What's the impact of trying to mix income levels, which you would like always to do? So we just haven't made that determination yet.
Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
I just had a question about the number of parking spots that you have there. Could you tell me what calculation you used to figure out how many parking spots there are?
Jeff, you want to talk about that? We're using the general requirement and then taking certain offsets for a couple of additional advantages that we might have. Jeff, you can talk about that.
Yeah, I think we're using, let's see, where's my chart here?
Looks like you're using 2, right?
Yeah, I could chime in on that one,
Board.
Jeff. This is the other Jeff Bowler, professional engineer, state of Connecticut, Bowler here. So basically right now, what we're showing is a 15% reduction. What that was we were basically accounting for the bicycle parking at 5%. And then I believe the transit within 750 feet at 10%. So that was a 15% reduction. And I believe basically we were 2 spaces over parked at 99 where the requirement was 97 with the 15% reduction.
Great, good. I'm always looking to see parking be reduced to the minimum that we can do.
Right.
Good.
Have you thought about any retail here?
Yes, so sorry, I didn't describe that, but yes, the whole first floor would be retail, and I think that's what gets us, as I recall, to a 4-story building. So we have 1 floor of commercial and then 3 stories of residential. So the 57 units are over the 3 stories of residential. And whether that's retail or commercial, that is to be determined. Our sense right now is a heavy retail presence in this spot may not be the right use, but some smaller amount of retail and commercial, whether that's office space or other kind of destination businesses, that would make sense. So that's the first floor, actually. Have any additional questions on this particular site?
Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, sorry. Can you go back to the map? The potential offsite trail connection, are those buildings kind of, like where that marker is on the map? Are those going to remain as it stands now?
Yeah, these are buildings. This is the business park that
Right.
there. And so what we're showing here is there's this Eversource easement that's been developed. It's maintained and mowed, and it's almost an ideal spot to make the connection behind this parcel here. And I know, having worked on multiple residential projects in the area, we've often talked in planning about making a network between these might be appropriate, and so that's where we talk about this as a potential. There's issues associated with it. Obviously, one of them is that this is a different landowner, but it gets you're right at this point you're touching another, the standard is right here. So that's a project that might be interested in that.
Right, okay.
Okay, and I guess you can transition into the other project, and we can still keep thinking about questions we might have for either one of them.
Sure. So the next project is abutting this site. It's the 541 site, which is right now the Christmas tree farm, if you recall. Pretty large site, again, pretty restricted though in terms of development area. It's got the same easement issues, the Eversource easement, and then the sewer easement, and a lot of wetlands, obviously. So it's a fairly small developable footprint. But based on the developable footprint and the zoning, this is, Jeff can talk about how we would zone this. I feel like we were doing a map amendment on this, but what we were getting to was 89 total units. And this is a different look and feel. It's really a combination of kind of connected townhouses, things that might look like triple deckers or double deckers. The emphasis being on sort of individualized housing, and some of those are townhouse configuration, meaning multiple floors within one unit, and some of them are flats. So it's really just kind of mixing up, mixing up the offering, mixing up the architecture of the site. Certainly New England design, New England look and feel, clapboards, stone bases. The buildings aren't that tall, so in some cases, if you have a 3-story building, we might try to do stone bases to try to bring the height of that down. These are really not that tall buildings. I think 3 stories is permitted in this area, but we weren't so far finding the need for that. Some of the, in this lower right-hand corner, there's an image of a C2, C3 image, and that's sort of like a double or a triple decker type house. Because of the way the topography falls, we were originally thinking that might have to be a 3-story, but there's actually a walkout capability. So some of that will end up being buried into the hill. The site has a good bit of topography on it. We don't obviously want to, we've got to work with that. We don't want to put in a ton of retaining walls. You'll see along the spine of where that main road is, sort of parallel to the wetlands, that is a fairly high area. So on the north of the page, let's say the units that are on the north side of the road on the page there, those units all have walkouts actually. And some of those would be a walkout within the same unit. And in some cases, they would be a separate unit. So again, in this case, we're getting to 89 total units. And we're trying in this, I think this is sort of a transitional project or a product, really. You've got the PB3 right next door, higher density, more of a downtown feel. And then you transition into what is, a relatively dense product, but still it's a pretty open site. It's a beautiful site, actually. And there's a lot of open space north of the page, let's say. In terms of amenities, again, talking about that inner site connections, we have shown there on the top of the page a walking trail, which again would be nice to connect to the 555 site. It would be even nicer if we were able to connect that to some of the other sites right in the area. I would think this product might be a little bit more attractive to some families, maybe more so than the high density apartment building. So I think our amenity package needs to reflect that. Again, you'll have things like playgrounds for kids, dog runs. I think there's more opportunities to do things like community gardens or pollinating gardens, that kind of a thing. It's just a beautiful site. And I think you really want to take advantage of the view sheds that you've got, especially to the north of the page there. I think, in terms of roadways, we are, for the most part, putting roads within the easement areas and then trying to take the rest of the areas that is a pretty limited area for footprint. That's where we're trying to put all the buildings. So it's a pretty, frankly, I think it's a pretty creative plan for getting a decent amount of structure into a pretty tight site and still allowing a really large part of the site to be open and used for, enjoying nature and that kind of thing.
I'm
Jeff,
glad to see finally some middle housing being proposed.
Right.
This is
Missing
classic
middle housing. We have really focused the development area on what's previously disturbed by the Christmas tree farm operation mode areas and places where, and in fact, the crossings of the wetlands here, when are walkable for the most part, except during really wet periods, because it's been, you can see it's been used as a farm. And so there's farm paths that go across really the cedar swamp in this area. And it does allow you during times of, when it's not flooding at times, that it would be certainly accessible by foot for pedestrians. And like Michael said, some of the amenities we would consider would be, overlook platforms, yoga decks, outdoor grilling, possibly, very we're doing a lot, our landscape group does a lot of community gardens and pollinator gardens on our residential projects these days, and have been very well received with those. So again, the majority of the access road, we did this boulevarded access road, that's under the easement for Eversource, and we've been, we have a good understanding of what Eversource requires and doesn't allow. And so all of our building footprints and structures are outside of that easement.
And Jeff, for the zoning approach,
Yeah.
Was it text
Yeah.
map amendment? Can you describe that again? I'm out of
Sure,
my-
sure. So it's currently zoned RAR 90. And we would be doing a concurrent map amendment to design multifamily residential. And there's also a flood hazard zone that impacts some of the area over here. And it's, we've run into this before. It pretty much, it follows the edge of the stream over here, but it's a little inaccurate here where this is the swamp kind of works in here, and that's not part of the flood hazard zone where it should be, but it shows it as being in this area here where the topography tells you right away that you're well above the flood zone, and the flood elevations associated with Cedar Swamp Brook, because it runs through here, we're well above it. So we would be probably rezoning a small portion of the flood hazard zone in concurrence with maybe a letter of map revision from FEMA in that area, because it's like we've run into before, it's not an accurate representation of where the flooding takes place. And that would be done concurrent with the application for multifamily under the design multifamily residence.
And we'd be permitting both of these projects at the same time, really. So.
Any comments or questions? Well, it does look like an interesting project, and I think it's something that we would like to encourage in different parts of the town, and
Sure.
could possibly be a template for some other areas in town.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would these be rentals or condominiums?
They would be rentals.
Rentals, okay.
Yeah, there's certainly, I mean, we've seen, just as you referenced earlier, there's definitely a lack of sort of this middle housing that is, before single family homes or single lots. As developers, we're just not able to find the formula that works where you can do, small for sale product on very tiny lots. I mean, usually the zoning isn't organized to do that. And certainly there's a movement to change zoning to pocket neighborhoods and that kind of stuff, but which may be popular in certain populations. But right now, within the constraints of what zoning is and construction costs, this kind of a product at least gets people to, all their own front doors, the articulation of the buildings gets you that, and color combinations gets you that sense of this is your place. For us, rental is just a more desirable product than condominiums are. That's sort of a business decision as to what we do, but we think there's a lack of that product on both the buy and the rental side, actually. So, and so much of the stock that's out there in the market, not just your market, but ours and all over New England, is really just so old that the population is really underserved by what's there. You just really need new product, amenitized, new construction and energy efficient products, insulation, and products that conserve energy and water, and you're just not finding that in most of the developments around New England. They're just all developments. So that's
so are there things in our regulations that push you toward rental and away from condos?
I don't know that they're in I think it's more economics, honestly, because of the the tax hits that a developer will take when they do condos. We've done condo projects. We just don't love them. It's, you
Okay,
know,
all right.
it, in some states, the condo documents are onerous and it's difficult and the legal costs are very high. And then you have to deal with the tax consequences of getting all those dollars up front versus spreading it out. We tend to view our projects as long hold kind of projects. I mean, that's the way we build them. That's, you know, we're in the middle of our careers. We have a long runway in front of us. So we like the idea of building things that are going to last. And it just sort of fits the tax structure that the US has, honestly. It's not just an individual town or state. And it fits our model for the way we want to live with these, you know, well-designed, well-built, long-lasting products. And we want to retain ownership of them. So.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Laurel.
If you go back to your map, again, I'm gonna just be a question on like traffic flow. So you have, right now you have the traffic in and out of where like the dollar store is and then the business park. And then you're gonna have an ingress egress for your first development. And then you're gonna have this ingress egress for this new development. So how does that put a strain on entering and exiting on 44, which is already a busy road? I mean, I assume there'll be a traffic study done, but you're going to have like 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of major entries right next to each other.
We'll have one where the existing driveway is for 555, and that is this here, and then one. This is a single, you know, in and out, so it's basically one driveway where the curb cut is for the Christmas tree farm. And we will certainly do a traffic study. I've done some quick visuals on sight lines to make sure that that'll be achievable, and we'll be needing to present that. This is a state highway, so DOT will require us to demonstrate that sight lines for the appropriate speeds, not just the posted speeds, but what people actually drive out there are able to be maintained. And we have certainly far enough separation from this driveway. And it's not an enormous number of units that are being proposed here. So that we don't anticipate it, you know, in the 80s here and 50s here. We don't anticipate it being having impact to the infrastructure of the state highways where they come together here.
What about a sidewalk that would, you know, we talked a little bit about the trail in the back, but what about a sidewalk that would connect these two developments down to the intersection with Discovery, and or crosswalks that would have to get you to the sidewalk that's already on the other side, so to speak? The bike path that's on the other side.
I think we can definitely explore that. Given that, you know, we'll have 2 projects worth of frontage to do that. And then there's, you know, you have, this is the driveway and the dollar to the office park, business park here. So it's at the light with Discovery. So it's not that far stretched. We can look at that.
Okay, because that's a good opportunity for connectivity. I think it would be almost safer to connect to the light via a sidewalk versus dealing with crosswalks in, you know, the immediate ingress egress. But just having run on the other side and quite a bit and knowing that intersection well, you know, connecting that would be a good opportunity.
No, I think I agree completely. That's a good idea.
Go ahead, Katie.
My thought is also to, when we're talking about the traffic and all of that on 44, there is a lot of traffic on 44. This also development is going to be just about across the street from Rolling Hills Mobile Home Park, which is an over 55 park. And there's about 200 and some odd residents in that area. And they're putting in new mobile homes and modular houses all the time now. They're really putting it, there's a lot more people coming in. So when you do your traffic studies, also realize that the other side of the road sometimes has a very hard time getting out because of the traffic that's coming up 44, and it is very fast. They come out of Birch and they come out of Cedar Swamp and zoom up to Discovery Drive. So I just would like you to keep that in just in the back of your mind about that other development that's across the street. Thank you.
Right.
Yes, go ahead, Binu.
Laurel and Katie have brought up good points. Is there a possibility to do just one cut for both developments?
Can you say that again?
On what?
Just one, exit and entry for both developments, like have like an internal connection, and then when you come to just have one.
One curb cut. Binu, I think the issue becomes you need to do a substantial wetland crossing, or we're not really proposing any improved wetland crossings that don't already exist. So that, there's a wetland here that comes all the way up to, you can see right up to pretty close to Route 44, Middle Turnpike. And that's what prevents us from connecting the two projects with each other. And that's why this is separate. There'd be a pedestrian opportunity to do a pedestrian connection where the Eversource and the sewer easements have gone across that wetlands, but we're not proposing to do. You need to fill a wetland to do a vehicular, and then you're into a situation where you'd probably try and keep both curb cuts anyways.
Thank you.
It's always
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you for that presentation. That's very interesting, very informative.
Okay.
And, we look forward to seeing your application.
And you will, and thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure meeting all of you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
So I think that's it. Jennifer, right? Is there anything else we need to do tonight?
That is it.
Okay, we are free at 7:07 p.m. See you in October.
October 3rd. Take care.
October 3rd, right?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.